moving around. Market.
Sarasota Experience, interview number 3.
We didn't even know the part that we were playing, even though we were playing that part. We were a part of the story. I like to say there's his story and then there's our story. His story doesn't always include me, and his story can't tell it from the perspective that I see it. I was born here in the city of Sarasota, Memorial Hospital, the 23rd day of October, 1947. Growing up here in Sarasota, traveling with my mother and father throughout the city was remarkable. My dad was a truck driver. He drove for Walker and Hollowell Lumber Company. We built most of the houses in the city of Sarasota, hauling lumber. My mother was a housekeeper, as were many of the people living in the Newtown area. Throughout the area, we were taught early of what was going on around us in the way of differences, I should say. If we were traveling, we normally stopped. We were very blessed to have points that we would stop off to use the restroom. Margaret and Dan's, the supermarket, the grocery store. You went in and there was colored and white water fountains. Margaret and Dan is located today on 3rd Street in the 1500 block of what was then 3rd Street. It is now Fruitville Road, but that's where we would be able to use the water fountains. I was a paper boy. I carried the papers. I can never forget my most memorable moment as a paper boy trying to go into Miss Susie's front door. Miss Susie was I wouldn't say a bar, but a place that people came to drink and everything. It was very, very sophisticated in that Miss Susie didn't allow men that were unattached to sit with a woman that was unattached, stuff of this nature. And the older guys, the two older, Alfred Pumpy and Leo Harvey, had me to go to the front door to get the paper money. And Miss Susie said, "Don't you ever let me catch you at this front door again. You come to the side." Miss Susie Linda was a paramount individual in the city. She had her own business. She was self-sufficient. Her husband, Mr. John Linder, worked for the Coast Iron Railroad. When I grew up, the Lido Casino was off limits to people of color. And you wondered why. The movement was just getting started here. You had people who would stand up and stand out, speak up and speak out for seeing these differences. We would pass and come. It was funny because today you will find that Lido Casino at the corner of Orange Avenue and MLK. Once they tore it down, that's where they came and dumped it here in the city, in Newtown. So when we see these things and you know these things are taking place around you, growing up, you're seeing that there's a difference. You know that there's a difference. And it doesn't take long for you to know your place. When we heard of the Sunday excursion out to Lido Beach, where we were going to touch the water, we were at the northern end of Lido. This was where we dumped out city water waste. Wastewater went out into the, and that was where we were. Reverend Floyd and others went into the water with individuals. We were the younger ones, and so like the bigger boys and the bigger girls were the ones that spoke up and went out with them at that time. We were 9 and 10-year-old, 11-year-olds. Things that made a difference here in Sarasota, probably about 1964, we were able to go into the different theaters outside of the Ace Theater on 5th Street here in the city of Sarasota, which was the Black Movie Theater. We were able to go downtown and go in and out for soda water tops at that point in time. So we start seeing things begin to change. The nightly news, Douglas Edwards or whomever would bring the news, Walter Cronkite or others who would bring the news to us. We would see things happening in other areas, and people like Gene Carnegie taking a group into the Ringland Shopping Center and going into the breakfast area and making a change, sitting down. As a matter of fact, Miss Booker lost her title because she was a part of that. She gained it back, but the crown was taken from her because she had participated. There were those who were senior that took the children into heart and passion and didn't want them to become a part of this movement, this change that was coming about. So they were a bit more reluctant to being a part of change. And then you had others who were driving this movement, people like Mr. Humphrey, that would push quietly but in an evident way. Mr. Neil Humphrey was NAACP president. He was very active in making change in the community. He was also his own business. He was his own boss, and so he didn't have to respond to anybody. He and Mrs. Jones, Miriam Jones, would speak up and speak out. They would do things that would make things happen. Newtown had a lot of its residency in the church. The church, we had strong preachers who brought the people together, and we would sit and conversate on change. Are you going to go into Morrison's cafeteria? Are you going to go into this place? Who's going to go with you? Who's going to be nearby? We didn't have mobile telephones at that point in time, so you had to know where everybody was and what was going on when these things took place. Be prepared for what might happen. We were engaged in traveling, and I'm going back to traveling there for a moment, on the school buses, and we were going to play in another city, Polk County or something. You passed a hanging tree, you went by the mulberry tree, and you saw these things. It was given to you to make yourself understand that there was a difference, and you were a part of this change that was taking place. We were just seeing the veteran of the Korean War coming home, and he came home different than the veteran of World War II. There was a difference because he had gained and interacted with other people from other areas of the country, and things that you didn't know anything about taking place in Kansas. We didn't have any idea of a park in Newtown. What is today Rosemary was, for me, Overtown, starting at 4th Street where the fire department is. Cousin Richard Elam lives. His wife was a beautician. 1375 brings us to the Carey building. 531 Central would be the Old Payne Chapel church, and it was upstairs and downstairs. That was fun, taking a body up or down for a service. But it was also the meeting place. Our St. John's Day brought all of the lodges and the stars into this area. And that's what, when I spoke earlier of the Lily White Hospital, that's what supported that adventure. People of color lived all through from 4th to 9th Street And again, what is today Lemon, that was a railroad, and we lived all in there. There were quarters of housing. It was quite an adventure to walk from here, and you would take the railroad to Overtown. You'd walk as a kid. You would walk in a crowd, 6 or 7, and we would do it right where the Rosemary Cemetery is there. Next to it was U.S. Royal, and they had a large cement parking lot. And Christmas, everybody got your skates, and you skated over to skate on U.S. Royal parking lot. But everything else took place over town. We had not only Payne Chapel, we had Bethlehem. Bethlehem is the church that was pastored by the Reverend Louis Colson, and we all know his story, being the surveyor of Sarasota, finding 5 Points to be the center of the city. You had so much going on in the Overtown area, people of color living there and being there for quite some time. Outside of my mother's kitchen, we had a pepper tree. I was a B-17 pilot because of the comic books that I read. I could climb up higher in the tree and I'd be B-17 wing gunner, tail gunner. I was a truck driver growing up in that tree. That pepper tree was such a place of memory, and I grew up loving to be me. I found me in the comic books. I was allowed to get 1 comic book a week when I went to Margaret and Dan. This was the place that had the colored and white water fountains, and I was able to get one of the classics and read the classics. My aunt would bring from the waitresses, and this would go back into the story of Sarasota, the waitresses. I read Boy's Life from Bill Watrous and others that I would get the books, the magazines that they would get, and after they had read them, I would read them, and learned quite a bit in being a Boy Scout, even though I was never a Boy Scout. But I learned the principles there. When I grew up, we didn't go to the same school. My class was the first class to go to Sarasota High. Willamita Armstrong, Bill Clyburn came out of the Overtown area, and they were selected to go to Sarasota High at that time. Change is beginning to take place, and that was in 1965, 64, 65 that we would do it. Segregated, yes. We didn't eat at the same places. We didn't drink from the same water fountains. We didn't even go to the same movie theaters. The hospital was still yet segregated. We were still on 2 East before the hospital allowed us to come in to 1 North, where Ms. Timmons and Ms. Thomas and others would work. So yes, Sarasota was segregated in a number of ways. You knew that. Many people didn't have a doctor, so they went to Dr. Wendell King, who wasn't the doctor that others would have gone to. If I had to talk about things that took place in Newtown during the 50s and the 60s and growing up here, I would have to mention my Uncle Johnny Simpson and Johnny Simpson's bar. My uncle would say, "White folks don't let me in theirs and they can't come in mine." He had his own bar, he had his own. The Neil Humphrey in the drugstore, everybody had to come through the drugstore, and the big boys would thump those of us who were little on the head to get us out of there when we weren't supposed to be there. And the Rec. This is the place that you learn to dance. And this is the place of young romance. This is the place that you did the Hully Gully, you did the twist. This is what happened, and that's what makes this Newtown, the place you want to be. You go to Miss Winnie's, you go to Baker's Service Station, you'd even go to Miss Marlowe, Eddie's Fruit Stand, Hubbard Jenkins, A.C. Payne, all people of this area who own their own businesses and made this a thriving portion of the community. When you came to Newtown, you had to come to the drugstore. That was Mr. Neil Humphrey. Or you had to go to the rec. You had to dance. You had to do the Hully Gully. You had to learn to do the twist. You had to really get in on the electric slide. You did that all at the rec. And this is what you want to be a part of. You want to be me. One of the things that I most remember on a Sunday is taking a trip after church, after Sunday school, going to the Skyway Beach. That was where we went to the beach at. We didn't travel to Lido. We didn't travel to Venice. My dad would take us to the Skyway. And there during that time, the Skyway was built in '54, so we were just getting there in the late '50s, and there were still pilings, rocks, big rocks and everything. And we had our beach. When I think of that, I think of my going to school. When I went to college, I went to Gibbs Junior College because I couldn't go to Manatee Junior College. And we traveled across the Skyway every day on a bus that was provided for Sarasota by Manatee County. All of the blacks would ride a bus that came from Manatee County, pick us up in Sarasota, and take us to Gibbs Junior College in St. Petersburg. When I think of those things and the beaches and the places that we traveled to get to what we needed or what we had to have. My grandmother had television, and WSUN Channel 38 was the television station of that time. And we would all go down to her house. We hadn't gotten television yet. And Rosa Parks, Miss Parks, Sister Rosa Parks had done something that really had not happened before. She stood up and sat down. I went to the Booker High School. I went to the Booker Elementary when we were still in the barracks. And so that conversation came up. As little boys and little girls, we were talking about change and what is it going to cost us. Remember, Emmett Till had just been slain. We had the Moors, a couple that was blown up because of their activities in civil rights. So we knew both sides of this story, and here's somebody coming, standing up, an older lady. Sarasota was, again, different, and the people from within Sarasota were different. There were certain minglings, and then there were certain non-minglings. Where was I? I think that was 1963. Dr. King, most people miss November 22nd, 1963 being the day that Kennedy was killed, but Dr. King had gotten up and made this speech. Some of the churches held meetings after Dr. King's speech. It was big time talk when we went to what Dr. King had done. As a jitterbug, as a youngster, we weren't ready for that. It was new. But Dr. King did set the example for so many of us in the church of what we could be, how we could be. He had finished school, college. He had done this, and he brought the people together. It brought us to that place of understanding that working together we could do things and see things and make things change. We were jitterbugs, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, growing up at this time. 63, I was in the 10th grade, and we were just seeing this actually happen. When I come through and give them the story of Sarasota's Newtown, I normally start at our cemetery being Galilee. And when I speak of Galilee, I take you first to Cousin Jerry Hemphill, a Spanish-American war veteran, a real Buffalo soldier of the 10th Cavalry, 4 units, 2 going to Spain and 2 going to Cuba. Cousin Jerry Hemphill I met and knew was from here. My Uncle Charlie Hardy, who was on a hospital ship that was torpedoed by the Japanese, and stayed on a raft for 4 days. My dad being driving Patton's Red Ball Express and carrying fuel and ammo for the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. Rather than bury and burn, he volunteered and they went to Japan, where he was at ground zero for both Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's where they parked their trucks. He was a trucker, and they parked their trucks at ground zero. He would tell the story, seeing these guys there with this thing, and I go, really? Yeah, and they had the stuff all over them, but it's amazing. When we came to getting his benefits, all of the records of the black military person was lost in World War II in different fires that took place. Philadelphia and other places, they had fires that burned up the records of those people of color. That drove me to being in the military. I'm one of the few people that went down on Rawls, where our board was for registering, Select the Service Board was. And I'm one of the few people that volunteered and was drafted at the same time. So I volunteered for the Air Force. I get in the Air Force 24th day of August, 1967. And I get in basic training at Lackland, and I get the opportunity to call some 5 or 6 weeks later, and my mother says, "You just got drafted." I said, "A little late now." I was in the Air Force. I'm very much one of those individuals. You will find me daily in one of the caps of those individuals who served. I will wear the Air Force for me being an airman. I will wear the Buffalo Soldier for Cousin Jerry Hempfield. I will wear the Army for my dad. I'm a veteran. I believe in the red, white, and blue. I believe in this country. I believe this is a beautiful experience. An experiment, some say, but it's a beautiful place to be. And the military is a part of that. I'm a very proud veteran. 601, April the 4th, I was in Osan, Korea, K-55. I was a veteran. I was humping the ramp. I'm a ramp rat. I protected the aircraft and the weapons that we had there. We were still yet under the Pueblo being taken and Commander Lloyd Booker. So when Dr. King was slain, it was maddening. It was scary, because you were the veteran. You were on active duty when this took place. Are you going to fight? Are we going to work? We were already up against the North Koreans, so we really didn't have, we had to stick together. And for me, at that point in time, it brought us together. There was a coming together, because my enemy was bigger than the enemy that we were playing with here in America. One of the worst things to have happened to me, I think, as a young man growing up, having lost Michael, having lost Tapa, working in Sarasota Memorial Hospital, 3 West, 3 Northwest, in the men's ward, and here's a man laying on his back with a broken back, worked for the telephone company at that time, telling me, dance, jigaboo, dance. Now there could be nothing more hurting to me as a child, a young person, than to hear this when we have just come through what we thought was civil rights. We thought that we were getting someplace. And I'm reminded of from whence I came. I took this one from an old lady, and she said, going there, I can't tell, been there, how to get there. I was there. I had that experience. I had that experience where no matter how high I thought I was, I always had to remember from whence I came. When I think of segregation today, it is inclusive. The people of Sarasota are the ones that are being challenged, the people from Sarasota. Those individuals who were born and raised here are no longer a part of the Sarasota of today. So we are segregated. We are separated from the people who live here today, the people who are coming in here daily. When you hear a conversation and an individual tell you, how long have you been here? Oh, 6 years. I've been here 3.5 years, and I'm Sarasota. It changes because I'm here. We are segregated when the people from Sarasota can no longer be a part of Sarasota. We don't see it in housing. We would rather give away our land bank, properties that have been set aside for future generations and individuals working in Sarasota to be a part of Sarasota. We're segregated, yes, but this time it's all of us. It's a difference between us now being of color and the people of Sarasota who are being challenged. We're out. We have, Newtown is known as an opportunity zone. It's opportune for everybody but the people living here. Anybody can come in here, do what they want to, and go away from here. But it is happening throughout the city of Sarasota, and more than just this area. Other areas now are seeing themselves being challenged when they're building a bigger house and next door to you, and your taxes go up because theirs did. And mom and daddy worked all their lives to get this, and now y'all got to go. But that's black and white. So Sarasota is segregated. The segregation isn't just in color, it's in people today. I would love to see Sarasota build a working relationship of loving one another, moving towards that place where we were working together and the people had a mind to work. Not everybody's going to work, but those of us who do, those of us who come to one place on one page and just work with that one page. I don't need a bunch of them. I don't need the distractions. I need to stay focused, on goal, and on purpose.
What do you think makes a community thrive? What do you think makes a community great?
People. The people of that community working together, setting goals, working towards those goals. That means that we're going to have conversations, more than just race and reconciliation. We're going to have to be putting this into action when we go forth to make this a better community and to make Sarasota the new town.